You can tell I'm cutting corners because I'm making this video on a rickety stack of rocks. Some people. Okay, well, I went shopping again and I purchased this. This right here is the bigger brother to the Access Go underwater housing that I reviewed a few weeks ago. This is the AquaTech Elite Series 1, and this is underwater housing made for the GH5, the Panasonic GH5. Whereas the Access Go underwater housing is made for the iPhone, its bigger brother, this beefcake right here, is meant to house a much bigger, much more expensive camera, and hopefully it's meant to do that in a way that won't actually damage the camera. Little side note, this is the Elite Series 1. This is an older waterproof housing. I found a really good deal on eBay and I couldn't resist. AquaTech has since updated the water housing. It's made an Elite version 2. The Elite 2 has a few updates. I believe they added a second shutter button. They improved the existing shutter button and then also implemented a new handle. But I figured their products are so high quality that if I got a slightly older model, I could still shoot underwater, which is really my main objective. This right here is just a neoprene cover. It protects this beautiful dome, which I presume is for a wide angle lens. Now this housing is new to me. I don't know that much about it. I haven't played around with it very much. And so I can't yet speak to everything that it's capable of. So far the knowledge in my head is just theoretical. So I'm not gonna attempt to review this thing or talk about it because I don't know about it yet. What I will attempt to do is find out if this thing is truly waterproof or not. So anytime you buy equipment that goes underwater, whether it be for a cheap GoPro or an expensive camera, whether it be new or used, you definitely want to make sure that it's watertight. So you essentially want to waterproof test it before sticking anything expensive in it. It's just common sense, right? Because, you know, if I stick a $2,000 camera and lens into this thing and it ends up not being waterproof, Sergey's camera goes bye-bye. The very first thing that you want to do is you want to open the latches and you want to inspect the O-ring. The O-ring is essentially just a rubber seal. The pressure of this thing being smashed onto the O-ring is what makes it waterproof. So you just want to cruise around it very meticulously and make sure that it looks good. Make sure there are no imperfections on it. Make sure there's no grains of sand stuck in it. And you also want to cruise around the base plate and do the same thing. So look for any sort of imperfections, any cracks, any creases. Looks like there's a little bit of rust on the outside of the base plate. That's probably okay and as to be expected because this thing is going to live underwater. You want to go ahead and push all the buttons, twirl all the knobs. Basically, you just want to almost abuse this thing without your camera actually in it because you want to replicate the roughest conditions because you want to ensure that your camera is going to stay dry when you're in the sea bobbing around. And so, in effect, your hands are going to be the sea during this test. Once you've verified that the back of the underwater housing looks good, you want to seal it up using the 4 latches. You can see the latches apply quite a bit of pressure on the back of the housing because this thing gets, you know, it wants to pop up once you affix one latch. Cool. So right away I'm noticing that the O-ring, that rubber seal, is getting pretty smushed by the back of this thing. That looks really good. It looks like it just might do its job. Once you've finished inspecting the back of the unit, you want to do the exact same thing to the front of the unit. The way AquaTech sets up their underwater housing is they make these lens ports removable. so that you have options as to which lens you can shoot with. So this dome right here, I presume, is for a wide angle lens. It's pretty wide, so I can stick my 17mm to 14mm in here, and the housing won't obstruct the view of the lens, so that's kind of cool. Inside, under the lens port, you're gonna find another O-ring. You wanna do basically the exact same thing. You wanna look at this rubber seal to make sure that it's intact. And this one also looks brand new. So I'm gonna go ahead and seal the lens port, put it back on the underwater housing. And I'm also gonna put a little bit of elbow grease into it and seal it up tight, because I don't want any water leaking in. All right, final last little inspection, and now we're gonna throw it in the horse trough and see if this puppy's watertight. Let's go. 1, 2, better not sue. Cool, it floats. That's a nice little benefit. So this underwater housing floats, which means that if you're shooting surf or jumping in a lake and you accidentally let go of it, it's not gonna sink to the bottom. And that's kind of cool. Now, basically, without any sort of rhyme or reason, you want to try and replicate rough seas. So put this sucker in the water, wiggle it around, try and get the housing to fail. Again, you want to try and replicate the roughest conditions possible to see if this thing is waterproof, because you don't want to take any chances doing it with an expensive camera inside. So far, so good. Let's keep going. You can also come over here and press all the buttons, twirl all the knobs. Don't touch the latches, those are off limits. Everything else is fair game. Look at this knob. I don't really know what it does yet, but I'm twirling it. I see some bubbles coming up. I hope that's not a bad sign. All right, I think that's probably good enough. Okay, so first things first, again, you're gonna inspect the crap out of this thing. You're gonna look at it every which way to try and find drops of water, which I am not seeing. Once that's done, shake off excess water, and let's go back to my rickety table where we're gonna dry this thing down and peek inside to see how it weathered. Okay, so first you want to dry your hands because you don't want to taint the sample. You don't want to ruin the experiment with your wet, mucky paws. And then you are going to very meticulously dry the housing because you don't want external water getting inside. That will also make the reading inaccurate. So spend a few minutes cleaning it off. In fact, you might even want to just let it air dry for an hour. I don't know, maybe not. because you don't want the drops inside to air dry either. So I take back what I just said. Okay. Don't want to scratch my newly used lens port. So actually, you know what? I'm going to put this neoprene case back on because glass and rocks don't seem to mix very well. And then I'm going to keep wiping. And I'm going to pop the latches. And as I pop the latches, I'm also going to keep wiping because water is a sneaky little thing. And then as carefully as you possibly can, just lift the back of this thing off and set it aside. We'll get back to that later. Look at that. Bone dry. There's no water in here, not even a drop. Now I can see a couple little drops here and there and there and there, but they appear to be on the outside of the O-ring, which doesn't bother me one bit. And also maybe I contaminated some of it when I pulled it off. The important thing is that the interior of this underwater housing is bone dry. There's no water. While you're at it, you also want to inspect the back. And again, you see some water droplets about where the O-ring is, but you don't see any on the interior. You do see some drops here, but they're on the outside. That makes me really happy. Sweet. And just for good measure, let's go ahead and look at the front. Since these two things have passed the tests, let's look at the front. So you can see there's a little bit of water, but it's not on the inside of the seal. It's on the outside. So that's really good. So at this point, I'm an extremely happy camper. The AquaTech Elite 1 series underwater housing did the trick. The test was passed. I now feel comfortable enough to stick my GH5 in here and take it underwater. I assume in the coming days, weeks, months, I'm going to do just that. And then I'll publish some of those sample videos to this channel so that you guys can take a peek and try before you buy, essentially. So make sure you subscribe to this channel, Butenko Films, if you want to see more videos of that nature. I hope you found this video to be helpful. Again, I'll say it once, I'll say it again, make sure you waterproof test all of your housing before you stick your expensive gear into it. It's just a good idea. All right, over and out. Peace.